What if getting rich had less to do with adding more and everything to do with what to subtract? In this episode, Nell Derick Debevoise Dewey joins me for a deeply thoughtful conversation on wealth, purpose, and legacy. Women don't talk about money the way we should. Not honestly, not openly, and not with each other. But that's changing. I'm Syama Bunten, founder of Wealth Catalyst. And Getting Rich Together is where the conversation lives. Every week, a different woman, a different path, and a conversation that will change how you think about your own financial power. This community is growing and you belong in it. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review so more women can find their way here. Now, let's get rich together. I am here today with a brilliant and beautiful woman with a smile that could charm anyone from across the world, the incredible Nell Derick Debevoise Dewey, also known to so many beloved people as Nell 3D. But Nell, you've got a last name that can kill. One of the things that I love the most about you, Nell, is how fascinating and interesting the work you've chosen to align yourself is in the world. You know, sitting at this intersection of performance and purpose, helping people manage through pressures in their life, thinking about not what to add more to their life, which is honestly, I think, what most people try to tell others to do. You know, add this, do this, overdo this. But your philosophy really anchors around subtraction and what subtraction looks like and how we can challenge some of these notions and ideas in the world. You're also published, you're prolific, you're an incredible speaker, very dynamic. But the thing that I think is fascinating about this combination is the way in which you're able to influence people. And so today, I think we get to talk not just about the ways in which you've influenced culture, people, and capital, but also the people around you as a little girl, what life was like, and all those fabulous things. So now, welcome to Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
Syama, not surprisingly, a once-in-a-lifetime intro and warm-up. So thank you for that. So glad to be here. So glad to be here. I've been listening to episodes and, Getting Rich Together just works so well as an intro because you're like, let's get rich together. And I'm like, that title just works. So let's do it.
It's like, who's going to say no to that?
Yeah.
Now I love your home, your aesthetic, your style. But let's take it back to a little girl now. Did she always have such great aesthetic and style? Was she always so fabulous? Where were you, my love, at a young age of 7, 10, 12 years old? What was life like around you on this planet? Spill the tea.
Definitely fabulous, always, for sure, clearly. Somewhat nerdily, for sure, but that's cool. I love that. I don't know if there's an option for images in show notes, but regardless, I'm going to send you a fabulous little picture just to illustrate. There's a boa involved and
my gosh,
what were those things called? Maybe like a tankini. The little connected, they were like a one piece with a hole in the middle. Yeah, and it was a birthday party. I was wearing a tankini and a boa. So maybe there'll be a picture in show notes, or maybe people can just picture that.
I love it. A little girl after my own heart. So where did you grow up now? What was life like around you as a little girl?
So I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut, and a day that I'll tell you that sort of illustrates the whole journey. I think I was little, 3, maybe 4. And so I partially remember, I have some visuals on the story and I've been told it a few times, right? So, those memories that are hybrid of what you have viscerally and what people have told you. So it starts in Manhattan. We're in New York, sitting around a mahogany dinner table, being served lunch by the Jamaican house staff woman at my great grandfather's apartment on Fifth Avenue with his second wife, who he was married to at the time. And that's my dad's side of the family. But we're with my mom, not my dad. My dad was kind of a black sheep, of that family. But my mom stayed very close, and I was the first grandchild. And so here we are having lunch on Fifth Avenue around the mahogany table, and the little silver finger bowls come out to clean our fingers after lunch. And so I do my little chubby 4-year-old fingers in the finger bowl and sort of push back from the chair and put my chubby little toes up on the mahogany dining table, which my mom was like, oh, and because she was, not totally, it's not her family, so she's not feeling totally at ease, and it's quite stuffy. And my great grandfather apparently was just like totally tickled and into 3-year-old grandbaby feet on the table. So we wrap lunch there and drive north, kind of through Hartford, Connecticut, which is where I grew up, in a little carriage house behind a bigger house in the West End. Nice neighborhood that got not nice over the next decade, which is why we moved. But then we keep on driving north up to a little town somewhere around Burlington, Vermont, to my mom's best friend from growing up, who lived up there off grid, and got there just in time for dinner after dark, sat around the campfire with tofu hot dogs on sticks that we roasted over the campfire, same little baby feet resting warm by the fire, and, talked about Buddhism and hippies and when they lived on Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco in their post-high school, pre-college, post-dropout of college, whatever, in those years, and went to bed and spent a few days in Vermont. So I think that's the contrast, right? Like, speaking of what you know about my work now, being at the intersection, that is like in me.
Wow. How, as you were growing up in real dualities, and sort of experiencing and seeing both, how did that sort of express within you as a young girl, let's say in school? Like, did you find yourself sort of academically, like very academically inclined and sort of gravitating towards a set path and, this is the way it's going to be? Or did you find yourself on the more free spirited side and, on that creativity? Was it a bit of both? Like, how did that duality start to form together as you were developing?
I was just a grinder and an academic. And that's not fair. I was not a grinder. I was an academic, like purely singly, and a gold star junkie, kind of, but in a more academic, non-athletic lane, for sure. I think, my maternal family were like my great grandmother came to the United States. So third generation, whatever that is, like not a direct immigrant, but just kind of solidly middle class, like World War II greatest generation family of like do good, right? My grandfather paid me for every A and bought my watercolors from me starting at age 6, like just a real kind of capitalist, work hard, straightforward approach. My dad's family, so the apartment that we were at was Debevoise, the founder of Debevoise Plimpton, which for lawyers or New York people is a huge law firm in New York. And so they had kind of started that with a very firm policy against nepotism. And so my grandfather was left to go elsewhere. He was a lawyer, but went up to Vermont, interestingly, actually also, and did a bunch of legal work for the Rockefellers, kind of brought Vermont Law School back to life, was attorney general. So also very achievement, but in a very civic-minded way, not in kind of a capitalist wealth creation way. And that grandmother was probably in some ways, the most parental to me, even, I would say. Like, she was tough. She was a New Englander and she was tough. And she made no bones about what she thought was a good life, which was serving, which was not being kind of at the mercy of the man or any single man, but working really hard. My uncle, the dairy farmer, is definitely like her pinnacle of success. And she was very disappointed that I wasn't athletic. That was like a piece of the well-rounded that, like, I remember pretty vividly being like, you're probably a little chubby because you like don't do sports. Like, are you sure you don't want to keep doing lacrosse? Like, there definitely was like some of that. Anyway, charming. She was tough. So anyway, how did I find myself? I was, and we were very much like, in my elementary school, we were middle class like everybody else. Like there was one or two families that were like, ooh, they're kind of like rich, probably. They were probably maybe upper middle class, but that was the look and feel. And other families that I knew, like, ooh, they live in an apartment, like they don't have as much. And we were just solidly in the middle. I moved when I was 12. My mom scraped together money to buy a house as a self-employed massage therapist, which is what she was, because the school I would have gone to was a real battle zone, like not safe. And the school I went to was quite fancy for my frame of reference at the time. Jazz band toured Europe, school ski bus on Wednesdays, like a lot of opportunity. And so there I was not a rich kid. Like I was not in the middle of the economic. I was lower. Like I was not going to J. Crew as often as those other girls, you know. And it was fine. I wasn't lacking for anything, but I was not a cool kid first because of my nerdiness but also because of I ascribed it to be somewhat because of the economics there. So anyway, that's a long rambling answer to your question.
No, thank you. It's really, I feel like moving schools, moving geographies, especially as a young person, like you don't have any control over that, like there isn't, it's like you're moving and sometimes what's interesting is, moving and seeing your social economic status shift, right? Sometimes only becomes apparent when you're looking around you, right? It's almost like you likely wouldn't have known anything except that your environment changed and therefore how you related to yourself changed because, it was like very in your face. And yet as a young person, it can sometimes be confusing, right? Like, what does that mean, or how do I sort of reconcile these things? Did you see yourself, as you think about your high school days, did you see yourself going, okay, I'm going to, work super hard at school so I can go to a great college? Was there any sort of like, I need some financial independence here, let me get a part-time job? How did you sort of think about like that high school version of yourself who was looking at like independence and launching, right? Like those 3 years before you find yourself in college.
So always had a job as soon as I could, definitely. And not like forced by my parents, but definitely like that was the way I was gonna get to the mall on the bus, much less buy anything at the mall. I mean, my grandmother would take me shop. My other grandmother would sometimes take me shopping, or my mom. I had I think some version of an allowance. But no, I definitely worked through. From when I was 15 or whatever. I babysat even earlier. I started a party planning company at 11 or something.
Hold on a second. You started no wonder you were so fabulous at hosting this Greenwich salon. I'm like, backtrack. What was this party planning company at 11? And like, what did you do with the money you made from that?
Well, ironically, patterns continue. I don't know how much money I made from it, but it felt like a good idea. I think it basically was birthed. I think one of my babysitting clients like asked me to help with a party. And I was like, well, that was fun. And I could charge a ton more for it. But even that, I mean, God, all these things have such depth when you look at them, right? So even that, I remember like deciding that I was going to like offer this. Truly, I'm 12 because it's before we moved. So I'm like 11 or 12. I have a few babysitting clients and I'm putting it out to them. And I really remember like, I think I drew a flyer or something. And my mom was really supportive. Like she wasn't like, honey, you're crazy. You can't do this, or this is scary, or like, I'm not driving you. Like she did it, but she also wasn't like proactively, she certainly wasn't like, well, how are you going to think about pricing? And like, let me take you to Kinko's to make, there was no drive from her to lean into this kind of entrepreneurship
Yes.
as a teen. Which is interesting to me in retrospect. Like I've thought about that since then of like, again, have at it, no barriers, no restriction, no shame, but neither any like go forth in that direction of business. In other ways, I would say she was more encouraging, but not really in the lane of business or economics. And so I had those jobs to have some pocket money, but there was never and like I got the A's to get to Harvard and did the extracurriculars, blah, blah, but not with any sense of like, oh, I'm going to get to this new level of upper middle class that I've seen. It really was, I don't know that we can quite call it like intrinsic motivation because it was totally external gold stars that I was chasing. But it really was kind of like in say, not as stepping stones.
Yeah. And also, to think of more like I need money so I can do things I want, like it's also just like very practical, it's very much like, hey, there's probably not, I don't realize that I'm giving myself this advantage of what we call work ethic. I'm more like supporting myself so I can have the things I want and you had no barriers and it was like, all right, have at it. Did you ever like when you started to earn a little bit more money in high school, did you have a mindset of saving any? Was it
No.
like, let's go shop? It was like, yeah, like, I remember I also started working when I was very young. And I remember, I think I was like 15. I think I was like 15. And I remember going to Nordstrom's with my girlfriends, and my girlfriends, their parents would give them the money to go shopping. And I remember my first pair of jeans that I bought myself that were designer was a pair of Sergio Valente jeans from Nordstrom's. And I just remember feeling like so, and it was like a Michael Stars shirt. And like, it was like very like of that moment. Were there any purchases or anything you spent your money on in high school that you're like, this was like a moment for you?
Yes. So I think mine when was it? Yes. So this summer, I guess it was later. It was the summer after I graduated from college. I went with 6 friends, a high school friend and 2 of her college friends, and then 2 of my college friends, rented a house together, 7 of us, 3 bedrooms, just to be clear, in Newport, Rhode Island. Great beach, like fabulous destination, and got waitressing jobs. And I, touch wood, happily, this is no longer true, but until like probably my mid 30s, that summer waitressing, I made more per hour in a few of the hours than I did for like 10 more years, I think. Because of Newport, right? And so you'd have a great tip day on a Friday lunch, Saturday lunch by the water. I was on the water at a restaurant. Anyway, and I was headed to Tokyo with like a real job teaching English, which was not like a finance job in New York, but for teaching English in Tokyo is pretty good money and, subsidized accommodation. So I didn't really have the sense that I was like saving for the year, much less saving for retirement. So I have all my cash literally under my pillow at the end of the summer from waitressing. And I bought a pair of Burberry sunglasses, plaid all around, like the whole rim, all plaid, and a Gucci purse, which is probably why we're actually friends.
Wow. Oh my God, I love that.
The Gucci purse is upstairs. Been repaired like 3 or 4 times.
Some of those moments, I think, I don't know, like there is something, nowadays, I think, luxury and fashion and all that stuff is very like overexposed and but there, back then, I think that it definitely had this, greater significance, right? Greater sort of
Totally.
personal.
I mean, how did I know? I guess by then I was in college, so there was more places, but there was no Instagram to see this. Like you didn't see Gucci wasn't on Facebook. There wasn't Facebook.
Yeah, there was no Facebook.
Mark was a year behind me down the hall in Kirkland. Like there was no Facebook. So we didn't have yeah.
That's so funny. So when you were at Harvard, did you have an idea what you wanted to be when you grew up? Like, how did you sort of think about crafting your education, thinking about sort of what did you think of yourself at that time in terms of what you wanted to be or what you wanted to create in the world?
So from that 12-year-old moment of seeing kids divided by an arbitrary line, these guys have to worry about their physical safety, and these guys are getting nourished to Harvard and Europe and skiing. I wanted to go into education. I wanted to fix that. It felt like bullshit, and not in like a pity party, whatever, but just like suboptimal. Again, I told you I was a little bit of a nerd. And so it was just really this sense of like, we're losing out. We're all losing out by not cultivating everyone the same way. And so I cross-registered at the education school during undergrad for a few different classes, at the policy school for a few different classes, and studied psychology with a real focus on social psych, developmental psych, learning. And, the job in Tokyo was because I had gotten the travel bug when I studied in Paris for my junior fall and loved being an expat. So I wasn't quite healing American public education. But that became 10 years of international work in as frontline as I could get education, ending in Palestine, living in a refugee community for 4 years and building a mental health program there.
I mean, hold up, wait a second. So these 10 years, I mean, gosh, I remember some of the most formative life experiences for me happened when I would be international. It was like the opportunity to be like, oh, people can be happy anywhere. Like what the idea of what we need is so relative and subjective and arbitrary, and so much more about media and socialized culture than it is about necessity and true spirit-led desires and wants. Talk to me about those 10 years. Where was your mind, your heart? How did you decide to go to these different countries? Being in a refugee camp definitely is not for the faint of heart. It's like something where you're really preparing yourself, but then also probably walking in a bit blindly, and be like, all right, I'm gonna go do this. So what were those 10 years like for you?
Phenomenally educational and formative, for sure. Frustrating because of the up close exposure to the extent of brokenness of the economic system, of the political system, of every education system, not just the American one. And very reaffirming of the universality of humanity, and that talent and assholeness and creativity is just like sprinkled around all 8 billion of us. And there are no geographic or religious or racial trends. It's just sprinkled like sprinkles on your ice cream. And so these inequities in how we allow, much less encourage people to get to their best selves, are really suboptimal.
Wow. That's a lot to sit with. Like, that's a lot to ingest, especially in those first 10 years of you being launched from university are also like some of the most formative, right? Because it's like, you're figuring out like, what do these things mean to me? How do I incorporate them in my life? When you found yourself coming back to the States, how had you changed? And like, what do you think that you thought differently about or did differently? Like, how did you start to relate to yourself and reintegrate back into the country?
That's such a good question, and shows your knowledge of life abroad, because reverse culture shock is so real, right? And I had changed, like I hadn't been an adult. I had never worked in the United States. I graduated college and I left. So now all of a sudden I did an executive MBA from 2010 in New York and London, but still living technically in the West Bank, though I was on the road a lot, and then kind of settled in 2011, 2012 in New York. I think, the words that come are cynical is one that comes immediately. And I'm not, like, I don't know if you've met me. I'm not.
No.
Um, and so I think what I would say is not hardened. That's another word that comes, but grounded is another word that comes, just, or like maybe unflappable is the best hybrid of all of these, right? Like there's just a sense of perspective of like, what could be true? You could be a Japanese salaryman sleeping through rote, dismally boring and poorly constructed English classes, headed to work tomorrow with a 5 to 10% chance that a colleague might have committed suicide the day before on the train, and like that's your life in Tokyo. Or you could be the mother of a 6-year-old who has been suicidal for the last year or two at 6, threatening to like jump off your balcony, and now have found this mental health program and that's eased. Or you could be the kid of the Jordanian prime minister who owns Hyatt and Coca-Cola in Jordan and the West Bank and funds said program so that the kid's not suicidal. And like the range of human experience that I was like 3 to 4 feet from for those 10 years made it like a little surreal to kind of bang around Manhattan as a 32-year-old.
Yeah. And also
In good and
to
bad ways.
yeah. I mean, the perspective and experience, I mean, you can never know less. So, like, there's no way to, like you can't, like, shut it off and pretend like it didn't happen. And then also, I don't know were you like, I don't know if you were getting paid by an American program or HQ, but, you come back to the country and, you're like, "All right, now this money has to go this much further," and now it has like, things sort of like the dynamics of, like, where the capital takes you and, how far it takes you and, how we think about what the money is funding or fueling now that you have this different perspective, I'm sure was really fascinating. During those 10 years, as you were sort of moving and traveling and being so frontline with education, when you were thinking about, coming back to the States, were you coming back with like, all right, I have some savings and I can like, fuel myself here until I get a job? Was it like, I'm back here in New York, but like, what the fuck am I doing? And like, how do I land? Like, how did you think about establishing yourself, um, coming back in your early 30s?
So, Shama, I have a superpower that is really sharply double-edged, dangerous, of like total financial faith, maybe I'll call it. Because no, I didn't really think that way. And yes, Manhattan is ridiculously expensive, even in 2012. And no, I didn't have savings from my nonprofit salary, which was being paid by a US organization, but at local West Bank rates, essentially. I mean, we got paid a bit more than local staff, but not American salaries, not expat salaries. I had a little E-Trade account, thank God, with some Apple. Thanks, Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. So that was going a little ways, but like it wasn't 6 months so anyway, I came back still working in that job. I decided that a freshly minted MBA from Columbia and London Business School would be probably the best moment so far to get like a real job. And so I applied to a few of them, probably not that many, did not get any of them or very far with any of them. And so I started a company.
As one does.
as one does. And, to not that, like, I really kind of, like a monkey through the jungle, swung from a consulting thing to a consulting thing, right? So, like, there wasn't any time in those first few years that I wasn't being paid by something or someone. Um, I certainly didn't have health insurance or like a 401k or any visibility to like 4 months out. These were all like relatively short term contracts and still in the social impact sector. So like really not particularly highly remunerated.
Not a hedge fund manager for sure.
No,
Yeah.
no, no.
What was it like for you
And
to build this business, and to be like, I'm coming from, I mean, in many ways, it makes so much sense. Like when you spent the last 10 years, frontier, wild, wild west, like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to make it work. Like being a business owner
yeah,
in many ways feels very natural, right? It's like, I don't really know what's going to
right.
happen, but I know I'm doubling down.
It'll be
You
fine.
certainly have a good degree behind you to help with like, getting things going. But degrees don't replace real life experience.
And they come with student loans. P.S.
Yeah. So what was that like to start to establish and find yourself as like, I don't know, a business owner and this new identity and starting to navigate, earning money as a business owner, but then also like earning money as an individual, and like how to sort of think about that.
It was phenomenal. I loved building the business. Um, I was not shy to charge as much as I thought we could justify from the people we were working with. And it was a really, I still think, interesting business model of kind of two-sided training and consulting. Nonprofits were our clients, so were foundations and corporate donors. And so I was very flexy, right? We sold MBA interns kind of in the summer to do consulting that we kind of oversaw. We did training for them. They got the experience they wanted in the social impact sector. The organizations got a really cheap whatever. But any given summer, we had a client that was a startup nonprofit supporting women in New York City with zero budget dollars, an ED and a volunteer staff of 6 who kind of put her own money in, and Guggenheim partners
Wow.
who have
Difference. Yeah.
plenty of cash. Different. And so these guys, for that intern, hopefully nobody will be too upset 11 years later when they hear this, but the nonprofit paid $2,500 for that intern, and Guggenheim paid 15,000.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So like it
Yeah.
makes total sense in my mind.
It makes
Like not
sense. Like,
shy.
that to me
Don't
is
get me wrong.
actually equity,
That was
right? Yeah.
correct. I felt great about it. Um, so anyway, I wasn't shy about that. I didn't pay myself more than what I needed, which for the first few years was rent in a shared small New York apartment and student loans. I was getting paid back by Columbia. So that was a $12,000 a year subsidy that they were paying because I was in social enterprise. Life changing like that, because that was the baseline really. And then I started dating my now husband in 2012. And at probably year 3 of the business, I mean, a lot of my lifestyle even was dates with him or travel with him. So, there's definitely been this theme of like access, not ownership. So I lived a pretty good New York life because I could afford to go out with friends sometimes on my own dime. And then we pretty quickly got into a serious relationship. And so I was in Iceland for the weekend on his dime, and even with my nonprofit role in the Middle East, the founder was the son of the former prime minister of Jordan. And so we stayed in the Hyatt suites when we were in Amman, and Bill Clinton chaired our gala when I introduced him in DC, and we stayed at the Four Seasons, right? Because not because I was paying for it and not because the organization was paying for it, but because we just kind of rode his coattails to stay at all these places around, so as I was thinking about our conversation and you and these conversations, that is kind of a loud and clear theme so far that I intend to shift over my next 20 years of wealth creation and then some. But that's been really interesting that I've had this approach, for better or worse, to earn, find, accept this interesting version of access, not ownership. And so I've had this, what looks like a very fancy life and very rich in experience and exposure and privilege, but not on my own time.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really profound thing to land on for oneself, right? Like what it like the access when you're also in this position of being a steward, it almost feels like there's also this like responsibility that comes from it. That sounds, it's like I'm here
Mhm.
on the dime of this other organization that's paying for it, but I'm stewarding this access in a way that's going to help to support X, Y, and Z, right? Or like it's almost like you're finding ways to be socially responsible with capital that's not yours, It's
And it is powering indirectly, but not that distantly, impact work that I feel very good and clear about, which is really interesting. Like the more I look at it and watch it, and I mean, to be clear, I raised $400,000 for that company and hired a team that way. And we're in our 10th year of a $350,000 federal contract. So that has been a very real, there has been revenue and money powering the organization. I have taken very, very little of that as salary to me because I have had this access to a very comfortable life from pretty early in the business. And so, it's really interesting, right? Like, is that ingenuous to kind of funnel, for example, like my husband's wealth into supporting this career that the world hasn't chosen to financially reward for all the reasons, like not externalizing that, for my own choices about how slowly I'm now building my practice, and again, not focusing, not aiming at wealth creation and capturing financial value, but having the luxury of really building thought and network and community slowly, which does not immediately generate wealth. And so is that kosher? I'm okay with it, but I watch it. It is interesting to see.
it sounds like another form of like equity in action, right? Where it's like there's just no right way to do this life thing. And, every moment, choice point, opportunity it gives us this chance to sort of think about, who am I? What is the world I want to create? And can the things in front of me help further that? And I think that and your inaction or action is directly reflected on your values and integrity. And so it's safe to say that no matter how much money there is, like we tend to show up with who we are, and then the money sort of amplifies, the ways in which we are in the world. How have you sort of been thinking, obviously with this development of your practice and the work and your voice, and recently you've done some great writing, including the work that we're doing at Wealth Catalyst, but in general around subtraction and wealth. And I've seen you kind of grapple with the ideas real time, like how do we sort of think about, um, you know, money making for money's sake, right? And sort of these concepts that you've been looking at. What are some of the sociological commentary, on what you're seeing and perceiving? Because you really are like a social anthropologist in many ways. And how you sort of intellectually pull together arguments, but then also from what I've seen in your writing, pull yourself into it, and it's really now sort of a dance between the two. What have you been noticing in your recent work around around money?
So, we started with our conversation when the tables were turned and really just talking about, let's subtract private wealth, not the industry. Don't worry, wealth managers. We value your work and insights and guidance, but the privacy and the silence, right? And so, amen, hallelujah, get to that Wealth Catalyst salon or summit in New York or SF or the salons in your neighborhood. But for sure, that's a biggie, right? For women, for younger people, for humans, like we gotta talk about it. But you're the pro on that. So I'll leave that one there. I think the one that is so pointy and activating for me is this wealth for wealth's sake, money for money's sake, and these derivative industries and practices and habits that we have developed that I, with great delight, found this 2,500-year-old word, chrematistics. Say that one 10 times fast, even harder than systematic subtraction.
When you wrote it, and I haven't yet said it out loud because I've been like, okay, what is it? Chrematistics?
Chrematistics.
I was going to call it chremastics. Okay, chrematistics.
Chrematistics, which I feel like actually is like almost onomatopoeic. Like it's not quite onomatopoeia, but like it does, like it's as hard to say as it should be to do, only it's not that hard to do in our modern economy. And it's a real fucking problem. I don't know how you edit or swear or not, but that is an intentional F-bomb. It's a real fucking problem because of so many things, because of all three of the Ds, right? My 3D is we lead for me, for we, and the world. And when we are making money only for money's sake, it very quickly and very nastily erodes our soul. And like Scrooge, right? Like A Christmas Carol is a story for a reason that continues. So if you don't see that, you're one of them. And like, I'm sorry, have a great life. So that's the me problem. The we problem also for companies, right? Like we've all seen companies that spiral off in the pursuit of profit, and it works for a minute, right? Whether that's a quarter, whether that's a decade. But have you seen how quickly companies are dropping off the Fortune 500 these days?
Yes.
It's not sustainable. You gotta have some soul, some reason for being. And if that reason for being is gorgeous, aspirational, buttery leather bags that 22-year-olds are spending all their summer's earnings on, I think that's okay, maybe, as long as they're not made by 7-year-olds who are in trouble or burning in the factory, right? Like, I think that that's okay. It's part of the economy, and so be it. But in the world, when we start making money for money's sake, people go hungry and people burn in factories that aren't responsibly done because the owner is worried about the money, not about baseline safety. And so I have nothing wrong with wealth. I've said it before. We're not subtracting wealth. Like, go earn it, women, steward it, pass it on, use it, whatever you want to do with it. But we need to subtract this circular, self-contained wealth for wealth's sake disease. It's cancerous, right? Unhealthy cells that generate in themselves are tumors that we are dying from and spending billions, trillions of dollars on research to end. So that's really the sociological statement that I am landing on around money.
That's really powerful. It puts so many of these new, financial instruments to the test, like what is the point, and how do we sort of think about, does every investment need to be a 10x? Can it be a 2x and like have some social
or
impact,
even worse, Totally. But it's not even just that everyone needs to be 10x. It's that our model, our being venture capitalists, is that only 2 will work and they need to be 100 or 1,000x. Yeah. And the rest, 98 others will go to 0. That's insane. Like, it's hard to build a business, but it's not that hard if you're paying attention and doing smart things. But when you're gambling on like getting pizza there faster or renting tuxes to men more conveniently, but not dresses to women. What are we doing?
Yeah. Yeah. The model of who gets funded, how, and then also sort of some of the broken models of venture capital, right? It's like they'll invest in 10 businesses that are the same, and they're like, "Best of luck to you." And, like, there's often no further support from the big ones, and, no real investment into the success of that company without realizing maybe the lives that are at stake, right, when these companies start to get funded. I wanna turn our
And I would
lens
say
to
the
sort of
opposite of support, right? Sorry, I'll let you move on in a minute,
totally.
but this is so
Yeah.
real. It's the opposite of support. It's forced toxicity of pay, move fast, break
Yeah.
things, including your
Yeah.
people. Like, no, it's really touch wood. I think we're finally at probably near the end of the worst of that era. And I'm not
Mm.
opposed necessarily to venture. It's just not a
Sure.
great model for most businesses. And for a while, like when I was in New York, I should never have raised those $400,000. That wasn't a good plan. There was no exit. There was no scale. Like that was a bad idea. So thankfully to them for the support and belief, but it was a terrible model for all of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, rant over.
No,
What
it's
were you
true.
going to
I
say?
mean, I totally I totally agree with you, and that's why we have the summit, so people can learn about all the other things, including venture capital, but, like, context and access and opportunity, I just think is
Yeah.
it's so incredible. What I wanted to talk about was, like,
Yeah.
stewardship, like,
Mm,
legacy, the future, conversations at home around, what the future looks like, as sort of an active, mind and member in your family, like as you're sort of thinking about, you know, what are the things that are important to you guys, and how do
mm,
you want to shape the world with your capital and time and energy? Like, what are some of those conversations like at home? And, how are you sort of seeing this like responsibility of stewardship evolve as you are evolving?
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, well, so framing, my husband is 19 years older than me. So he's 64, I'm 45, and he worked in finance for 42 years. This is his kind of ramp down part time year. And then next year he'll be fully retired. He was in municipal finance. We should have a panel on municipals at the
Yes.
summit at some point. Excellent tax free impact investment, bottom line, funding schools, bridges, public transportation. Just a little shout out there for munis. Unsexy, but really fabulous asset class.
And much needed,
Uh,
by the way, like infrastructure, like we need that, you know?
Correct. Much needed. Yeah, please do that, and save tax money. Um, so he has, accumulated significant wealth, not like hedge fund manager wealth, if that's gone well, but real money. And we've been together for 14 years, married for 10. So we are a partnership. And he was 50 when we met, and so our lifestyle is ours. And a lot of that wealth, I do still feel is his rightly. I don't feel a lot of ownership over. So thought partnering, like, we talk about the donations we make. He finally got on. Here's a little tidbit for folks: the donor advised fund, which I have some mixed feelings about because so much money is kind of marooned there with the tax break without the impact. So a word on that. And very powerful from a tax treatment perspective that, hey, you can put $150,000 of appreciated stock, by the way, away in that way, and then give out of it as you want. So please don't sit on it forever. Let it go to work. And a powerful way to get above that itemized deduction, right? We've been kind of swimming in that, like, oh, 10 grand here, 2 grand here, 500 here, that comes out in the wash in the tax return because it's not enough to make a valuable deduction. Anyway, sidebar. But so that, we're definitely thinking about together and talking together, which is great. We invested with kind of him as the funder and me as the face in a women's fund here in Connecticut, which has been great. I was really glad to be in the first group of women doing just 25 grand, which has amounted to, I think, 1.5 or 2 million that we've been investing in primarily women-led firms, some in Connecticut, some not. A lot of healthcare. We have this fabulous arrangement with a Connecticut venture firm, which is actually like top of active VC firms. Our first lady, the governor's wife, carried Steve Jobs' briefcase in the IPO. She came out of Stanford the right year, and so has been in venture forever. And so we have this really interesting, sleepy, quiet venture thing happening in Connecticut, which is great. So anyway, all of those choices we are thinking about together-ish, and then very much prioritize experience in terms of spending in our life, right? It's not like our house is absolutely beautiful. We got it at a great price at a great moment, and are on the way to downsizing as we bought a new house in Big Sky, and care a lot about that kind of experience for this next chapter of being in the mountains and with a community that's ours together. But the legacy piece, he's a very young 64, so touch wood, we've got several decades, at least 2, maybe closer to 3 or more. I'm 45, so who knows? I could go out anytime, but I'm not planning for it yet. But my legacy at this point that I do think about every day and care about is very much my intellectual capital and my social capital. Not because I'm not super excited about the fact that this work and my voice may well generate tens of millions of dollars of wealth in the next 20 years. And then I will be thrilled to really dig in. I have some ideas, but I haven't mapped it yet because it's not real yet. Of investing, of leaving my half-sister really secure, of setting examples, of funding businesses that are not making money to make money, but delivering value in their local communities, led by humans who have not generally been started off on third base. But I'm not, and he cares deeply about leaving solid grounding for his kids, which I think is a beautiful thing for him to want to do. And so I support it, I understand it, but I'm not connected to that part of it, right? That feels clearly like his, by right, by logic, by heart. And again, I'm so happy that that's there, and we are very much a family, but I'm not tuned into that as my legacy at this point.
How, as you sort of think about, you're so grounded in identity and your values, and it feels like just so secure, it's a really wonderful sense of self, and something that is clear, that's been inside of you for a very long time, this narrative arc of different experiences throughout your life almost feel like a lifelong preparation for the moment, and sort of like where you are today, as one would say, is no accident, right? Like you are exactly sort of where you need to be. Experiences, I think, when I ask people, what are the most fabulous things, you guys do with your money and how you live life, experience tends to be the number one thing I hear on the show. Everybody is so, and I feel like that's a shift. I feel like if we ask people this question, 15, 20 years ago, I think maybe like the world would have seemed a bit smaller, this sort of geographical flexibility, how we think about the world. What have been some of your most favorite experiences together where you have felt a sense of just like, wow, like awe and wonder?
Mm. Oh, lots, a few peaks. So the first one that I'll share, probably we weren't married, so maybe year 2 or 3 of dating. We were traveling a lot. Like that was something I had just lived a decade on the road, and 3 years and 30 countries while I was in business school. So I was like an addict, and he was totally fascinated and on board. And so, so one weekend, I think we spent 3 nights. I took him to Paris. So I think we probably got flights with miles, maybe. And then I booked and paid for the Airbnb. We stayed in this adorable, delightful apartment right in Saint-Germain, which is where my study abroad program was and loved.
Yes.
And we, and I was like, I got the trip, like, museums, €6 for Orsay, like, I don't know, whatever. Like, I got this. And he was kind of like, awesome, charming and like amazing, really. And I was like, yeah, definitely. And then, he's like, I would love to go to that restaurant, but like, I don't want you to, like, you don't really have to pay for that. Like, I'm happy to pay for it. And I was like, that sounds great. Why don't you do that? And then we went shopping. We end up in Saint-Germain, shopping one day. And he's like, can I do this? I'm like, definitely, you can shop for me. That sounds excellent. So, but it was just really sweet, because if he had booked the trip, we would have been at, not the George Sank, but, some lovely hotel for, I don't know, hotels were cheaper then, but call it $1,000 a night or something. But instead we had this amazing apartment. So it was just really fabulous in like, I know Paris, I speak French, I had lived there, he'd been there, but not the same. And so to your point about equity, right, it was just this very cool, not that things have to be level, that's not equity, but we were both bringing different things in different categories and it was a phenomenal weekend. I mean, I still can remember it so vividly. Yeah.
That's so magic. So as we sort of, I feel like as per usual, I could just talk to you forever. So, like,
Well, we booked 3 hours, right? Is this what you're doing for the rest of the night?
I know we can't do that. But, one of the things we talked about at the salon was like, we're all living so much longer, I mean, with science, technologies, especially as women, like, I mean, I'm really just so floored by like advancements in women's health. I mean, we already live longer anyways, and now we're finally starting to invest in women's health. And so imagine like, women will truly be like bionic in some capacity, because like we already live so much longer. So, but assuming that like you and I get to catch up at like, I don't know, 110 and we're like, hey, like, oh my God, now what a fucking life we've lived. What do you think in terms of just the volumes and chapters and books to be written that you're writing, that's sort of these chapters and volumes of your life, what would you want to look back and sort of feel in your heart and in your spirit about this beautiful life of yours?
Right now it's called Subtraction, and I think that that's real. But if I can zoom out, recognizing that 75 years, is that what you're talking about? 75 years is a long time, like twice that I've lived as a conscious,
So
sane
like you're a
adult.
baby now, considering, right?
Yeah, like it's phenomenal. It really is around permission to be ourselves, to live our 1/8 billionth life.
Yeah.
For me to be happy and good and engaged and curious and socially supported, for my company or team, whatever, whether we have a universal basic income or whether we're all our own entrepreneurs or somewhere in the middle, and our family, our personal we, right? So professional and personal we. And world, our 1/8 billionth of world, not saving the rainforest, not ending racism, not curing cancer, because you cannot. You may be wealthy, you may be smart, you may be hardworking. You cannot do any one of those things on your own. So pick a really narrow, specific lane of impact you want to have and do that. But that is the legacy I want. I want to give people permission to recognize that you don't have to do it all. You don't have to do more. You don't have to do it right. You've just got to do the work, which is not insignificant work, to find your path, right? And go do that. And I want that to become normalized. I want to be somewhat responsible for it. I don't need a ton of credit. I don't need my name on buildings, but I want to be part of that movement, a leader in that movement. I love teaching and influencing people. And I want to get paid for that.
Yeah.
So that I can invest in my own fabulous 1/8 billionth life, which is not cheap, frankly, but also so that I can put money into the pot when money is required to move this movement.
I love that. It's beautiful. Now, my final question for you has to do around what you're calling in right now. What do you need? How can
Mm,
we, the audience, support you? Like, how do we give you some extra love? What is it you're calling in this year?
mm. I really need engagement with this subtraction stuff, right? So my Substack, Subtract to Succeed, is my laboratory. I love this social anthropologist promotion that you've given me today. I'm going to run with that. So this month, we're just ending Wealth Month, was April. Next month is Joy. June is Bias. July is Interdependence. Like, we're getting into some juicy stuff. And I need, not like the hearts in the platform. Like, I guess editors do look at that and publishers. So that matters. Drop a little heart. They're free. But mostly what I want and need is engagement. Like, what lands, what's confusing, what feels aspirational and unrealistic, what feels helpful and transformational, format, topic, message, all of that. That's what I need.
You got it. We'll drop the link in the show notes so everyone can come and find you. Now, you are an incredible spirit. I am grateful for your generosity, for who you are. We didn't even get into like the work you do with horses. We didn't even get, I mean, there's so much we did not even
Chapter
scratch
2.
and get into today. But everyone who's listening, please, let's go find Nell and rally around her on Substack, say hi to her on LinkedIn, and know that there's an incredible spirit of joy that is with us. So thank you so much for being here today, Nell. What a gift.
Thank you, Syama. Total pleasure.
Thank you for listening. This is the conversation we come back to every single week. Real women, real wealth, and what becomes possible when we stop being silent about money. If today's episode moved you, don't let it stop here. Wealth Catalyst is where women go to take it further. Our Freedom Tour salons are gathering women in 32 cities this year. Intimate evenings in homes and private spaces where women talk honestly about money, risk, and what they're building. And if you're ready to go even bigger, join us at the Wealth Catalyst Summit, a full-day event in San Francisco this October. Find your city and claim your seat at wealthcatalyst.com. We'll see you there.